So we are the community team here. We have Lisa Simmons, who is the program manager of the community initiative, Luis Edgardo Coto, who is the cultural district's program manager, and program officers, including Timothea Pham, Ricardo Guillaume, and Veronica Ramirez Martel, as well. We are assigned various regions across the state. And so if you have questions about any of these regions, please let us know. You can see that most of us have 2 to 3 regions. In the pink, you'll see the state designated cultural districts as well. So we do have some speakers from our creative youth development and education programs today. So I thought I would actually show this visual so you get a sense of all the different program areas that we have here at the Mass Cultural Council. So we have the Cultural Investment Portfolio Team, Cultural Facilities Fund, Creative Youth Development, Education, Artist Department, Traditional Arts and Folk Heritage, Universal Participation, and our Community Initiative. In terms of our agenda today, as mentioned, we're going to be focusing on youth programs. The fall semester is in full swing, and I know schools, there's been a lot of activity in terms of trying to shift towards virtual engagement as well as different hybrid learning models. And we are also going to learn more about how youth programming at libraries looks like today, hearing from Jessica Villasnovas from the city of Lawrence. In terms of our agenda, we have Chi V. Quash, who is Director of Engagement and Organizing from Mass Creative. And we have Jessica Villasnovas, the Library Director for the city of Lawrence. Eric Holmgren, who is Program Manager of Youth Reach Meta Fellowship, and Meta stands for Music Educators and Teaching Artists. And then also Diane Daly, who is Program Manager, who oversees the STARS residencies, Creative Minds Out of School, Poetry Out Loud, and the Big Yellow School Bus, which is under the education program area. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end, but in between, as speakers talk, if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A box, and Timothea will be able to funnel the questions to the audience. And if there's anything that you want to share with us related to what you're experiencing when it comes to youth programming during this time, we want to hear from you some successes that you've encountered, some surprises, challenges, as well as solutions that you've come up with as you've all, innovated and pivoted during this moment. And you can share those thoughts in the chat function. So first, we have Chi. Hi, Chi.
Oh, sorry. Hi, hello. How would you like to do this? Do you want to share?
I can share if you want. Sure.
Sure. And I'll put the links in the chat. That'll make it easier for both of us.
All right.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Tri Quach. You can pronounce it kind of like G in Vietnamese if you feel like it. I am the new Director of Engagement and Organizing with Mass Creative. If you can move on to the next slide. So just a really quick, I know most of you know Mass Creative already, but in case for some of you who don't know, Mass Creative advocates for artists, creative workers, and arts and culture organizations. They have the most up-to-date information about state and federal legislation affecting the creative community. We share the impact of our community with lawmakers and decision makers, so they know our value. Make sure lawmakers and decision makers understand our needs when designing reopening plans and sharing resources that our community needs during this pandemic. And specifically right now, we're working on a campaign called CTV, Create the Vote, which we are working with a bunch of other partners to encourage more participation in the civil process of voting and census work as well. Next slide, please. So some of the things we're currently doing. I mentioned CTV. We had a few weeks ago a webinar talking about ways arts orgs are engaging their constituents in the election process and the voting process. So this coming Friday, we are having another one, kind of framing our work post-election. So it's, I'm gonna give you the link. That's a link to register for it. It's coming, well, it's coming up in a couple of days. But we have Attorney General Maura Healey giving us opening remarks and a broad representation from our community, from artists who use dance as a way to advocate for disability rights and issues, to directors of museums, and then organizers from the Sunrise Movement who've integrated art into their work, just to show a spectrum of all the different ways our community is using their platform for advocacy. And so please register at that link provided in the chat. Also, if you guys haven't mentioned it already, I want to do a little shout out for you guys. So Mass Cultural Council is also doing a COVID impact survey, and it's really important to us to support this kind of thing, because we need to know what our community is feeling through this. And the more information we have, the more we can bring it to the legislatures and decision makers. So please take the time to look through that and fill out those surveys, and to spread it to your networks as well. Just a quickie, Governor Baker has released his proposal for the coming budget, fiscal year budget. You can take a look at his proposal right here. In it, I think he has about 16.2 million for the arts and culture sector. We are kind of standing, holding until the House presents their proposal to see what they are asking for. And then of course, we will decide our legislative agenda based on that, and pushing for more for our community. Just a last minute push for voting. Assuming everybody is planning to vote who is here, I would ask, what is your voting plan? Statistics say if you have a plan, you're more likely to follow through with the voting. But also, it's not enough that you vote. As many people as you can get out to vote is just as important. So who are your five? Who are the 5 people you're going to connect to make sure they go out and vote as well? And then as the election nears, our work doesn't stop. Once we know the results, Mass Creative will be in the process of setting up its policy agenda for the coming year. But to do that, we're not sitting in a room and deciding what we think is needed. We're going to be reaching out to our community and asking them where are their priorities, so that we can have as much information about what our community needs as possible when we set that policy agenda. Next slide, please. Some of the ongoing organizing work that we're going to be doing is, in the past, we did this campaign called Arts Matter Day, in which case we try to flood social media to sort of lift the stories and voices of the great work our community is doing. We're going to do a little bit different this year and moving forward. We're changing it to Arts and Culture for Mass, and we're going to do it monthly. So beginning this Friday, we're going to launch that campaign, in which monthly we will spotlight one of our partners and the art they're working on. Beginning in January, those monthly spotlights will revolve around a shared theme, whether it's about art education, arts for empowerment, whether the power and need of museum, and then ask that our members and our partners join in on that conversation with the has hashtags that work for them, whether it's art and culture for mass, education for mass, creativity works for mass, and so on and so forth. So that promoting the value of our community, it's a year-round ongoing thing and not just a once a year push. If anybody has any more questions about that, we have an initial descriptor on our website. And then please contact me if you want to engage more directly, because we will be working with partners to develop those spotlights. And then the other big thing we're working on right now is to reshape our leadership council. In the past, it was kind of voluntary engagement. Like if you want to be a part of the advocacy work that we do, it's jump on board. But that created different sort of levels of engagement. Some people just wanted to help spread emails. Some people wanted to help with the planning. So we are in the process of reshaping that so that our leadership council is consisting of partners in the work. So other orgs who we can say, hey, you have this specialty that we think would be better suited to guide this other org. Can you engage them, please? So that's kind of a rough outline of the way we want to move that leadership council forward. But I will keep you guys updated as that is going. That's basically what I have for an update of what we're trying to do. And of course, it's going to get crazy after the election as well. The election is not an endpoint, it is another marker onto the next set of work that we're going to do, which I also would like to remind, just to share, we are going to send out a post-election care package of links, videos, and other resources for people to step back from the work a little bit, absorb and deal with the emotions of the result of election, and care for themselves before they start thinking about the next work. Because I know a lot of our community dealing with the pandemic and the election, and then our regular ongoing work as well, is stretched, to say the least. So if you are connected with us in any way, whether through our email or membership or anything, you'll expect that care package from us post-election. That's it.
Thank you, Chi. We actually have a participant who has their hand raised. So let's see if I can find them. So Bill, I believe you had raised your hand. I'm going to unmute you if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question or provide a comment.
Nope, just clicked on the wrong button. You're good.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, so Chi, thanks so much for the update. In terms of the hashtag that you mentioned, the arts and culture for MA, I think it was, is that something that you'll source from the field through different social media channels? How can our constituents really plug in and connect to that effort?
So we're trying to be consistent with the theme of for mass. Something art, creativity related for mass. And then making sure, so initially we were trying to find this one perfect hashtag that will work for everything, but that's not the case for our sector. Our sector does so many different things in so many different ways. I thought we thought it'd be better to have one arts and culture for mass, and then a myriad of other ones that are more specific to what they're doing. So if they can include that tag and then any additional tag that they think fits to add all those things together.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is something folks can do starting today if they wanted to?
They can. We are formally launching it on Friday.
Okay.
Yeah. And then ongoing after that, it will be a monthly thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. So now we're going to have Jessica from the City of Lawrence, the library system, share what they're seeing in terms of how youth programming has been impacted during the pandemic.
Thank
Welcome,
you, Lena.
Jessica.
Thank you. We're just so excited to be here as a public library as part of this conversation and all the tables we get invited to. So really, thank you. Um, so to talk about some of what we're doing now, I kind of want to share what we're missing out on and what it used to look like outside of a pandemic. On a regular week, we would welcome about 1,500 to 2,000 people. Now we see about 200, and that's because of our curbside services that's helping us to continue to engage with people in person for appointments. Of course, that has affected all across the board our youth services because so many of our programs were really geared towards the children's room programs, but also those that happen after school in our teen corner. And of course, none of that is happening at the moment. So just what we did a few months ago, and we're figuring this out as we go, of course, like so many people, is we looked at our regular program list and we thought, what is really possible virtually with these platforms? And we were able to continue with things like our Writing in the Arts Camp, which is a partnership with the local organization, well-known organization, Andover Breadloaf, that uses writing prompts with youth of all ages throughout the school age, basically, um, to meet and do some creative writing. So we're doing that on a monthly basis. It's on Saturday mornings, and we do it through a Zoom call. But aside from that, we've really had to lean on social media to post things like story time, which is not the same as having kids in front of you and engaging in person. Um, but we've also been able to move forward our speaker series. That's not so much a youth specific service, but it's really for the whole family. And this year we have a social justice theme, so we look forward to that in the spring. But with that said, we've really had to pivot. And so some of the new approaches we've taken, because we realized quickly on with the remote learning and so much of technology and people just spending their day on the screen, especially the kids and young people, we went ahead and tried to, I guess, pair some of that live programming and online access with some tangible things. So we thought about if we were having this program in person, what are some of the materials we would provide in person, and can we continue to provide that? And that actually helped us a great deal. And I think that's where funding support has also helped us, where we've been able to put together grab bags that we schedule families to come and pick these up at curbside. And they can pick up, a craft bag that has a lot of materials for the family to engage with at home. Very specific ones that we've done. So earlier in this year, in the summer, we were able to partner with Elevated Thought and also Essex Art Center to offer live art workshops. When we offered these live workshops for a couple weeks, we heavily promoted them at all of the food distribution sites in the city, which were basically school sites. And we were able to, through more funding from one of our funding partners, we were able to provide paint kits. So that was really exciting. We gave one per family. It was basically like a watercolor kit that they got to take home with them. And we figured, we could have offered the live program like a lot of people were doing, but libraries are really struggling to get people to really sign on to that live event. Maybe people will go ahead and watch it later. But I think the piece of adding like those materials and something to actually do the program with at home and providing that really has affected things for us and has helped us with that piece of it all. We've also tried doing cooking classes, which very new. We weren't doing that here at the library in person. And this is something, thinking about it, we probably want to continue it even post-pandemic. We work with this organization called Food Explorers, and it's what it sounds like. It's a cooking class, and the families tune in, and we provide the ingredients at curbside. So same thing as a craft bag. You also get a bag of some groceries in a way, like we did pizza last week. But that's been very interesting and a learning process for us to see what kind of programs people have gravitated more towards to, and also what kind of giveaways that they've been more interested in getting. And moving forward in the spring, we're working on this now, we plan to take a similar approach to the craft bag, but use backpacks instead. So we're building these backpacks that are going to be age specific, and it's really to support our school district, and to do more of this like providing of materials that are outside of the curriculum, but support the learning, and there'll be different themes bags. They'll include a lot of these craft materials, and of course books, because we want to make sure that we continue to get the books out the door. So that's some of what we've done with like the new approach. Something I think is worth mentioning, outside of like, and it's related to like new programs and program ideas, is that this has been an opportunity for us to think about partnering with others that we may not have partnered with in the first place, outside of this. So we were able to partner with the Senior Center. We had partnered with them in the past for very specific programs, but this time around, it was a pretty big partnership, and we did our entire summer program with the Senior Center, which has rebranded itself as the Center because they've really become a food access place and just a number of things, but also the city's recreation department. And that really allowed us to take this idea of virtual programming and really share the responsibility with everyone else for promotion's sake, with people's networks, but we also pooled our funding. And through that, we were also able to support a lot of our local businesses that were suffering and are still suffering because of the pandemic. So part of the funding, and thankfully, um, we were given the support to be able to buy gift cards to local restaurants and provide those as the incentives for this year's summer programs versus the regular incentives we would normally get, which are trinkets for kids. We usually buy very small prizes. And this time we were able to give like $25 gift cards for family, which was really wonderful. One last thing I'd like to share, that it's not so much a program, but we see programming potentially being built around it, is the installation of a story walk. This was a really big deal. A lot of funding had to back this up. The city had to back it up. DPW had to support it, the mayor, in order to make this happen. So with that said, we are in the process of finishing our very first ever story walk installation, both in our North Common and South Common. This was really important to us during this time because helping to promote literacy in the community in a safe way, by not attracting the crowds or groups of people and saying like, go to the park, stay outside, you can, enjoy this activity. But we paired that as well with a giveaway, because we just thought that that theme and trend was working for us. So through support as well, we were able to buy the books that are going to be displayed, and we have some of those that people will be able to come to the library to pick up when they finish reading. At the end of the story walk, there'll be one of the signs will basically draw them to the library. So we're really excited about that. And finally, we just celebrated Hispanic Heritage Month, and so it's something that in person we would have had some fun activities here and performances and that sort of thing, and we couldn't have that. But this year we really took to social media and did intentional daily scheduled posts, each day featuring a different author that was a Latino or Latina author, and kind of pointing people to the books that they've written and things that we own that could be checked out right away. If you have any questions, please feel free, but I wanted to give you kind of a general idea of what we're doing now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Yes, as Jessica mentioned, if anyone has questions specific to libraries or any of the programming that she just mentioned, feel free to put it in the Q&A. I do have one question for you. So it seems like, especially during this time, people have been shifting, not just in terms of changing up the programs that they make available, but also in terms of the relationship building that they're doing within the community. You mentioned, really working with different organizations or departments that maybe you hadn't worked with before. Do you mind if I ask, what has that process been like, just thinking about partnership building in a different way or in a new way?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely taught us to think outside of the box, but it's also something where we hope to continue it. We hope that it's not just a temporary decision that we're making, because we find like the immediate need to work with the recreation department because it's summer program time, but that these are probably things that we should be thinking about anyway. One partnership that I forgot to mention was LCAT, and a lot of our communities have these local access TV stations. So we partnered with them for our virtual programs because we just thinking about the digital divide and the whole issue of that and how magnified that was during this time. We figured the majority of the people who come into contact with our programs were already in a low-income community where we were struggling with a lot of these access points with internet and a device. And now we're saying, hey, you're going to find us online for all our programs. So we took to the TV station. Um, so we just, and I'm not sure if that answers your question, so feel free to re-ask. Yeah, so I mean, I hope to continue them. I think that's what it's kind of revealed for me, is that we probably should have been doing that in the first place. And we will work towards continuing a lot of those new things. Another one I'll mention very briefly is the partnerships with other libraries. So I didn't mention that, and I'm not sure that it would be too much of an obvious, but really I've seen a lot more public libraries near and far actually coming together to promote each other's programs. It wasn't happening before because we kind of are all in our own bubble and we promote our own programs. But now, because attendance, it's a big struggle to get people to attend these virtual programs. 5, 6, 7, sometimes 8 libraries at a time will get together to promote the one author or the one anything really, and really bring that attendance level up, which I think it benefits everyone. Our public library serves Lawrence and beyond. So the speaker series that I mentioned is actually in partnership with about 7 different libraries, most of them right in my neighboring libraries. And because we're getting together, we're going to be able to bring some pretty big name authors in the spring, which is very new for us. And so again, hopefully something that will continue.
That's awesome. We do have a question from the audience. How did you do your story walk? Was it virtual or did people attend live? And if live, how did you follow COVID safety protocols?
So the story walk, if you're referring to the same idea of it, I'm referring to the trademarked, originally from Vermont story walk, which is basically a physical, it's an installation at a park where we don't promote anything in person. So to answer that piece, nothing was promoted in person. It's in the process of being installed. So there are actual books that are going to go and be displayed haven't been placed there yet. We're waiting for some of the missing pieces. Very specifically, we're waiting for the backers, the little background that goes behind the piece of paper or the book. So yeah, when that goes up, the way I see it, we're going to promote online for people to go visit either park or both, and take the walk as a family unit or individual, which is what we've been doing for anything else that we've promoted that has brought people outside, especially our summer programs. Because a lot of what we did with, for instance, the recreation department is we put a lot of lawn signs in different parks. And a lot of the lawn signs pointed them to the library to pick up things like jump ropes and things like that. So I didn't go into those details, but everything we're basically promoting is for the family unit or the individual, not for any gathering.
Nice. Any other questions from the attendees? So thank you again, Jessica, for sharing. And now we have Eric Holmgren from our Creative Youth Development Department. And Eric and Diane, I actually, if you want to tag team and co-present, that's totally fine. I'll leave it up to you. But just a note to our audience, the Creative Youth Development and Education teams have really been, connecting with constituencies involved in creative youth development. And it's been really wonderful to be able to see some of the convenings and discussions they've been having around what holistic care means during this time related to youth programming. So we're really excited to have you both here. And I will let you take it away.
Well, thank you. So Diane and I work really closely. Diane's portfolio is primarily in school, so maybe we'll start there, and then my work is largely out of school. As a department, we fund school residencies, so Diane can talk more about cultural organizations and teaching artists in schools. The portfolio I oversee has 74 different organizations, 68 of which are out of school time nonprofits. So we work with those organizations around Massachusetts. We also have a program in collaboration with some private funders to support the teaching artists in those programs, because we really feel that there's a significant and systemic gap between higher education and the realities of community-based work. And we also fund young people directly through a program called Amplify, where we provide funding for youth-led projects around Massachusetts to make sure that young people have a voice as well. But Diane, if you're game, maybe we'll start with the in-school work and then move to out-of-school time. Oh, you're on mute. Still on mute somehow.
Now,
There you go.
you'd think at this point we would know Zoom like the back of our hand. So schools. What I want to say is that, let me just give a little context, is obviously last spring schools had to close, and all the work that was going on in schools had to, as they could say, pivot or switch from in-person to virtual. And what is really quite amazing is we had 283 school grants last year through our STARS Residencies program. And the teaching artists in that program really took this on, as the whole creative sector took it on, is to figure out how to achieve what they're really committed to, which is bringing creative learning to young people, how to do that in this new environment, in this new world. So there was a lot of learning last spring. There was a lot of trial and a lot of working with teachers to try to figure this out. But I really have to hand it to them, and this is both teaching artists and teaching scientists and teaching scholars. They really took it on and worked very hard to learn the technology and to learn how to design engaging programs. And they took the summer to do more learning. So now they are ready to really work with schools with a lot of understanding of how to do this in a better way. Still learning. We all are still learning about how to connect with young people in the virtual world. But they're out there. They're very interested in finding schools that want to work with them so that they can bring this creative learning. We did a survey recently of the cultural partners through the STARS Residencies program that provides grants to schools for residencies. And we found that the cultural partners are reaching out to the schools, and some of them know they're going to go full speed ahead with residencies and that kind of learning this year. And it's about 50-50, and 50% aren't sure how they're going to do it, because they're still trying to figure out, as most schools are, how they're going to manage this school year. So it's in flux, and it will stay in flux for a while. And I guess the big message is that the cultural partners that are out there with the resources that you might need to work with to bring services and great experiences to your young people are ready and willing and able to do that partnering. So if you know somebody and you want to reach out to them, do that. They're learning how to meet your needs if you're a school. I think I'll leave it at that for a second and you can take it, Eric.
Sure. So out-of-school time programs faced a really unique challenge in March of last year, and it's continued to evolve. We had schools shut down, and then schools trying to connect with young people virtually through technology and other kinds of instruction. And then we also had, the demands of home, and with a lot of the young people who work and live in the kinds of programs that we support, home was often a source of trauma in the first place, and now they were in those places. Then they had nonprofit organizations reaching out to them, trying to figure out how. And what we saw happen was a lot of young people start to just recede, and really not, they were dealing with the same things that we all were as adults, and trying to figure out how to prioritize things and where energy went, and dealing with the overwhelming nature of this. And there wasn't a lot of coordination amongst all the different sort of systems that talk with young people and work with young people. And so I think they were disproportionately hit with some of the changes that happened. We did, in March, we started convening these conversations on Thursdays to try to figure out what to do. We didn't know what to do, but we started holding an online space for programs to come together and start to exchange ideas and experiences in real time, because the solutions to shared problems were being discovered in real time. So we started with about 20 programs, and then it grew a little more. And then some folks from San Diego called us, in Pittsburgh and New York and Chicago and Texas and LA. And now we've got this national conversation happening now every other Thursday, where we're still trying to solve these issues and still trying to work through it. When the pandemic hit, we asked in July for the kinds of changes that these organizations made, recognizing that everyone pivoted to online learning. But what we found was actually the first and most significant change that these organizations made. The first effort that they put forward was not to deliver online programming, it was to just connect with young people. It was about well-being, it was about housing insecurity and food insecurity and basic mental health needs. And the arts sort of took a back seat. And we can't say that when we advocate for the arts very much, but the health and well-being of young people matters. The second thing we saw is that they didn't necessarily want to do the same kinds of programming that they were doing in person. There's such a mentoring relationship that exists in creative youth development programs. It's not this idea that artists come in and show kids how to make art. They already know how to make art. They have art in their lives. It's a way of cultivating that and bringing out that culture and that voice. And that was really difficult to do online. And we heard a lot of young people just want art kits and space to really process what was happening and to create at their own pace. Jessica mentioned elevated thought. When this is all over, everybody just needs to go to Lawrence and hang out at Elevated Thought. It's one of the most incredible organizations in Massachusetts. And what they started doing was creating coloring books for their community that was about their community and from that community. And they distributed them all over the place, and they didn't get nearly as much funding as they deserved to do that. But it's those kinds of ideas that I think really sustained folks. And now that we're getting back, we got through the summer and we kept these conversations going, and there was almost this pause, this deep breath in the summer. And now we're back into a phase of work for young people where the burnout's real, the same it is for us. The situation's changing, the same as it is for us. But young people don't hold the kind of power that we do to really navigate it. Their choices are not necessarily being heard in the same ways that schools are making them. They're at the end of this long line of decision making. So, schools and nonprofits have sort of started to blur together a little bit. We're having a conversation tomorrow with Boston After School and Beyond and a number of organizations about these learning hubs where, young people without access to technology and, may not have space in their home or time in their home are going to these cultural nonprofit organizations where there's already trust and a relationship and starting to do school together remotely. You probably all saw that earlier today. Boston Public Schools announced that they were going full remote starting tomorrow. They shut it down in a hurry. They gave less than 1 day's notice. That's happening in a lot of different schools, and it could ping pong back and forth. And as it ping pongs, I think these organizations that we continue to support are really having an amazing experience as kind of community health centers and mental health centers for these young people, making sure that they're taken care of, making sure that families are taken care of, making sure that they're being responsive, and then, as funding and time allows, to continue to develop that art and make sure that young people are able to tell their story of this pandemic as well. So it's inspiring in a lot of ways, and it's exhausting, I think, for programs and organizations, for fundraisers, for executive directors, for teaching staff, who many of which have been furloughed or just let go entirely. So I think there's hope in the resilience that young people have shown and in the stories that they're continuing to tell. But I hope we as a community can continue to elevate the work that these folks are doing and the supports that they're getting, and at the very least coordinate some of the communications and the demands that are being placed upon them every single day.
And I just want to add to that as Eric said, it's about the relationship between the provider and the young person. And that's the thing that in the teaching artist world, in the school teaching artist world, they are focusing on is how do you create that relationship? Because it's something that those young people, that's what they're missing by not being able to be in school, is their relationships with their teachers and with each other, and isolated at home. So the work is not just, as Eric is saying, is not just about that particular experience in the arts or the sciences or the humanities. It's about connecting with those young people. It's the social emotional learning. And the folks in these fields are really skilled and experienced in addressing those needs. And that's why, we're glad they're out there doing that work and are trying to support them in any way that we can.
Thank you, Diane and Eric. I think before, when we were talking with Jessica, like we were thinking about, how we have shifted our way of considering partnerships and relationship building. And it sounds like what you both shared is also related to, really thinking about what cross-sector relationship building looks like during this time as we try to get at that relationship piece, the connection piece. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how other organizations or even teaching artists in schools are considering ways to sort of rethink or redistribute power so that youth have more influence on the decisions that are made when it comes to programming during this time.
That's a really good question. I think in creative youth development, in the organizations we're funding, one of the key components of all of them is youth voice. And I feel like the cultural sector and these organizations and anyone working in arts education, like we're all in this process of learning how to listen to young people, and not just listen in a token way, but listen in a way that gives them power within an organization to make decisions certainly for their own artwork, but also for their colleagues at the program level. And many of these organizations have youth built in to the organizational level as well. So I think it's important to always erase adultism. This idea that you would never go into a store and see signs that say, 2 Puerto Ricans allowed at a time, or 3, African Americans allowed at a time, but you will see signs that say no more than 2 young people can be together in the store after these hours, or no more than 3 young people can be together in a store after these hours. That's this concept of adultism. And I think that, when we turn that around and start to really consider the assets that young people bring to the work, there's a real chance for us to begin to share power and to really experience their world of COVID, which is often disproportionately more difficult than many of us.
And one of the things that's going on in the shift in how the school work is happening is to really understand that it's traumatic. Everybody is suffering from trauma, and part of that is about inability to be in control of your situation. So the cultural partners are working very hard in their way to engage with young people in schools to be sure to build in choice into the programming. So it's about giving the young people an opportunity to choose what are they going to do, when are they on screen, what are their choices in terms of the activities and opportunities, because they absolutely need to be involved, and that's the best way to be able to get them through this experience.
In terms of, and this is kind of a question for you both and Jessica, in terms of communication between public schools and public libraries, is there anything you want to share with folks on this call? Has there been more communication than normal?
Yeah, thankfully, this is a really great situation to have. One of our newest library trustees works as an administrator for the Lawrence Public Schools. That's a big bridge builder for us. So through this person, we're really able to really have a great connection and good communication. But also during this time, what really has helped, I think, the community is the collective work that ends up happening around crisis like this, because we haven't been there, right? Like we had our Columbia gas crisis not very long ago, twice. And some of the same network building and approach to dealing in a certain time like this just resurfaces. So specifically, this collective work is seen when organizations like Groundwork Alliance, who have their specific mission, literally stand up in the middle of the crisis and say, we're going to gather all the nonprofits in the area, community leaders, members, please join. And they have these calls, these Zoom calls every Monday with like 100 plus people, with a speaker every week. We're talking about food services, housing, the schools, and then we all have working groups. I'm a part of the youth working group and XYZ. But just to answer your question, I think thankfully, because of efforts like that with these leader organizations, I mean also individuals like our trustee who's in the school department, I think we're doing okay with that communication partnership. And I know that's not the case everywhere. But I do encourage like this collective type of work to continue.
Thank you. And how about from Eric or Diane, from your end?
I mean, I can only, I think, best speak about it from personal experience because I married a music teacher. There is really only a tiny amount of human energy left after you're doing all the things you need to do and adapting in the ways you need to adapt to and following the procedures and changing procedures of schools. So it's really hard to prioritize this, right? It's really hard to think about all of the different kinds of communication that's going on. And so, I think my hat is off constantly to teachers because of their ability to do that. That natural reaction is to connect with young people and to think about the well-being of young people, which is hard to do at a systemic level. It's hard to do. I think this happens particularly with arts teachers because there is such a relationship in art making, whereas in some of the, a general second grade classroom, there's so many kids doing so many things and so many parents. It's so hard to not ask a million questions as a parent too, because we're all confused, right? And we got to let that go sometimes too, because there's so much else in the mix. So I think arts teachers on the whole are doing this exceptionally well. And it's another one of those unheralded pieces of being an arts educator that makes them so special.
Yeah, and I feel like during this time, we've really seen creatives really kind of like dig into uplifting and leveraging resources that get at community wellness. I feel like we've always known that arts and culture are deeply embedded in community development. And it's really wonderful to see the ways in which, in some cases, I would say in many cases, it's artists and creatives who are really leading efforts on thinking strategically, thinking outside of the box, and really sort of envisioning something new that creates, comfort as well as wellness and hopefully more equity. So yeah, so I do want to open it up for any questions for our guests. Or if there's just anything you want to share that you're seeing in your particular town or city around youth arts programming, or around like things that you see happening within the public school system or the public library. And if there are no questions, do our guest speakers have any last thoughts or comments or pearls of wisdom you would like to share or questions yourself that you would like to pose to others?
I think that just what you're saying, Nina, is that creatives are working very hard and very creatively and thinking outside of the box to be able to deal with a situation that none of us have ever been in before. And as Eric is saying, so are teachers. And I'll add in, so are parents. I mean, everybody, I think that's the whole point, is everybody is doing their very best to deal with something that's so unknown. So it takes everybody. It will pass at some point, but to get there in whole, we need to work together. And that, I think, is something that the creative sector does really well.
I think along those lines, I do believe everybody's doing everything they can all the time, and we all need to be patient, and we need to prioritize young people in all of our processes. And I think we'll get to a place that works as well as it possibly can right now for as many people as possible.
One of the things we've been talking about is, along with reminding people to care for themselves, but to extend that to sorry, I'm horrible with names, what Eric just mentioned about thinking about in the home, what are the spaces that we can provide for young people or outside of home for them to be able to be quiet, reflective, and heal, and outside of this tension that is our current pandemic. But also ask, when we're trying to take care of ourselves, do the orgs that we participate in, are they deliberate and conscious about creating space for their employees to be well, as well, to take that responsibility outside of just individuals caring for themselves. So we're kind of adding that additional messaging to when we say, hey, care for yourself, but are the spaces that you're a part of making more space for other people to care for themselves as well? So we just wanted to include that extra messaging.
Yeah, and I can add to that in saying that a lot of what we've learned from this and continue to reflect on is to not focus on how much we're doing, because I don't think we're going to be able to match up to the amount that we were producing before, and the number of programs, the number of people, and thinking at this point that doesn't really matter. I think what matters is that we listen to what people are responding to and want and need at this time, and do that and try to do that very well. So I look at the little list of programs we have, and we're part of our little list. It's tiny. It's not what we normally do, but we still see the engagement happening, and we're going to just work with this and hopefully continue to grow it during this time.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, care for yourselves, but also be reflective about how you're creating the conditions for care. As we think about how to create communities of care. So yeah, I just want to thank our speakers again for joining us, and for all of our listeners. If you have any remaining questions, feel free to contact us. I think she put his contact info in there, but I'll just put my email address in here too, if anyone has any questions that they want to send over later on. And we will have another community check-in sometime in November. Once we solidify the date, we will let everyone know. Thank you. Have a good day.